I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, the brutal murder of a nursing student from Tennessee named Holly Bobo. Her killer's been convicted, but he says there is new evidence proving his innocence. Here's the story. Holly Bobo was the kind of young woman people remembered. Soft-spoken, devoted to her nursing studies, rooted deeply in faith and family in rural Tennessee. She left for school one April morning in 2011, dressed in pink, waving goodbye. Within minutes, she vanished. What followed were months of agonizing searches through woods, rivers, and back roads as a community refused to give up hope. But the discovery of her remains shattered that hope and ignited a hunt for answers. Prosecutors pointed to a troubled man with a violent past building a case piece by piece. After years of twists, he was convicted of Holly's murder, yet questions linger about accomplices, motives, and whether every secret has truly been uncovered. Holly's absence still echoes across Tennessee, a reminder of innocence stolen and justice that never feels complete. All right, the bottom line, he's looking for a new trial, trying to get this conviction overturned. But we're going to take this whole program, this whole hour, to walk you through this case so we have a clear understanding of what has transpired from the trial to where we are now with this defendant attempting to get his conviction overturned. So let's go back. Let's go back in time to the original trial. Zach Adams is the defendant. Nick Barris from Scripps News Group has been on this story from day one in Tennessee. And he has a report here where he's taking us through the trial and the conviction of Zach Adams.
Holly Bobo disappeared from her Decatur County home in 2011. Many wondered if her killer would ever be caught, much less convicted. 6 years later, Zach Adams stood trial for murder.
She was taken, that she was kidnapped, that she was raped, and that she was murdered.
But this was no open and shut case. Yes, some of Bobo's remains were recovered, proving she was dead, but prosecutors had no DNA evidence linking Adams to the crime. No blood, no semen, a fact his attorney made clear to the jury.
Zachary Adams is 100% innocent of the charges he is facing in this case.
The Bobo murder is a death penalty case, but the evidence that led to Adams' indictment was all circumstantial. In fact, the case hinged entirely on witness testimony, and the key, the star witness, was Adams' co-defendant, Jason Autry.
And so Jason Autry was able to sell his death penalty to the government for a tall tale.
Yes, Autry and Adams' younger brother, Dylan, were both also charged with Bobo's murder, but Autry turned state's evidence.
I did not kidnap, I did not rape, and I did not kill Miss Bobo.
Autry admitted to some involvement. He told the jury he did try to help Adams get rid of Bobo's body, which they drove to the Tennessee River.
And I grabbed the upper torso of Miss Bobo. Zach come around, let the tailgate down. I brought the upper torso to the end of the tailgate.
That's when Autry said he heard moaning and realized that Bobo was still alive. He testified that Adams then shot her in the head. A bullet hole was found in Bobo's skull. It was Autry, along with the testimony of other witnesses who told, among other things, of Adams bragging about the murder, that ultimately convinced the jury to convict.
But has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
There was no doubt.
As they're polling the jury to see, is this your verdict? Is this your verdict? The jurors were yelling out, yes, it's my verdict, before the judge got to them. So they were enthusiastically claiming the verdict.
Jennifer Thompson felt the jury would surely sentence her clients to death. But then the prosecution offered a sentence of life in prison with one condition. Adams must look Holly's mother, Karen, in the eye at sentencing.
But I would like for Mr. Adams to look at me when I speak to him. I know that my daughter fought hard for her life.
And that was it. No conviction will ever bring Holly Bobo back. But a jury of 6 men and 6 women finally did deliver what the family, prosecutors, and so many others sought: justice for Holly.
So as you heard from Nick, this was a case, it took a while to solve, but you've got the evidence, not DNA, not blood. It wasn't that type of evidence. It was a co-defendant testifying against him, and then allegations that he was running around bragging about this. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation. And it's about the first case, the first trial. How strong was the evidence against Zach Adams? Right? Some people might think it was extremely compelling. Some might think it's not compelling, that they just wanted someone to pay the price for the murder of this beautiful young woman who was loved. Let's answer the question. Let's bring in our guest. Joining us is Chief of Police at the Talladega College in Alabama, retired homicide detective Chris Anderson is with us, and Tennessee criminal defense attorney Frank Lanham. Great to have you both here. Thank you for being here. Chris, I'll begin with you first. As a homicide investigator, a case like this, you don't have the DNA, you don't have blood, you don't have semen. What you've got is a co-defendant, and you've got allegations of the killer bragging. How would you sort of stack that up in the world of homicide investigations and evidence?
So these are the cases, and first off, before we get started, I want to make sure I offer my deepest condolences to the victims and anyone that has lost a loved one then concerning this case. When you have cases such as this, the one thing that we as investigators hate are cases that we don't have that DNA. You would love to have a DNA case where you have a hit that absolutely proves that at least that the defendant in this case was there on the crime scene. And you know, you want 3 or 4 witnesses who would definitely say, 3 or 4 credible witnesses that would definitely say that, hey, this is the man that's responsible for this murder. I know it, I saw it. I took pictures of it and videotape, but you don't have that in a case like this. And these are the cases that most homicides, especially homicide investigators like me, despise. You know, there are still a lot of questions in this case. You don't have really credible witnesses in the case, you know, but you still have to go along with the jury. A jury of his peers listened to all of the evidence that was presented, and they came back with the conclusion that they came with. So you have to add some credence to what they did and what they went through in a case like this. So like I said, you know, we could argue the points, and I'm sure we have an excellent defense attorney that's going to say something completely different than what I'm saying, but you have to listen to that this is what we have. This is what was presented before a jury, and this jury did decide to convict this man.
All right, Frank, I want to put this up on the screen. The key witness was Jason Autry, right? He did get a deal. He testified against Zach Adams. He served 8 years. He was released in 2020. He's out. He's out. So let me ask you about the strength of the case, the strength of this evidence. Now, it's direct evidence, right? This man said he saw Zach Adams put a bullet in Holly Bobo's head. That's direct evidence. That's not circumstantial. What are your thoughts?
Well, you can answer this question with a question. And part of it is the statement that the police officer, the investigator, just made. There are still questions. A man just has received a life sentence when an investigator says there are still questions. The number one statistic, the cause of wrongful convictions, is the very grounds for convictions in this case, which is eyewitness testimony. It is the number one reason people are wrongly convicted. So that's the first flaw that shows you this is the most weak type of evidence. But secondly, which plays probably a more important role, is Tennessee has very specific laws. You cannot bribe people to testify. You cannot pay people money to testify. And we all know the reason why. The reason why is we don't want our system corrupted by bribery when people take the stand. But yet, the government can take a life sentence and say, your only route away from a life sentence is doing what we want. that is legal when the government does it, but a $50 payoff is illegal. So if buying testimony with life is not damaging the credibility of a trial, I would like to know what is. And that's what makes this case have the weakest type of evidence you can possibly have.
Chris, we have about 30 seconds here. When you've got co-defendants, suspects, how do you know which one to believe? How do you know when someone is telling you the truth versus just trying to do whatever they can to save their own skin?
You know, and these are the cases, like I said before, and I'll stand by this. And, these are the cases that we hate to see as investigators, because when you offer a co-defendant a deal, they have incentive to lie. I'm just going to be honest with you. And then it's not that they may be telling you the truth. So, but they still have that. That's always going to be a question. And I don't know if that's a question that could ever be answered. But I will say this. You have to look at the corroborating evidence. That's the telltale sign of everything, the crux of this case.
Gotcha. Chris Anderson, great to have you. Thanks so much. Frank's going to stick around. Coming up next, when was Jason Autry telling the truth?
And he said, I need you to help me bury this body.
You have to punish him? You have to kill him for a few $100?
You don't touch fire and expect not to get burned. My goal is to embarrass you. My goal is to make you suffer. My goal is for pain. Make sure that you remember me for the rest of your life.
You weren't feeling any sympathy?
If I'm being honest now.
You kill a man for acting like a junkie when you're the one turned him into a junkie.
Interview with a Killer season finale, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
First-degree felony murder of Holly Bobo during the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate kidnapping of Holly Bobo. You checked guilty of first-degree felony murder of Holly Bobo. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So Zach Adams was convicted at trial. That goes back to 2017. That's when this trial happened. Now, again, we said some of the most important evidence in the case was the testimony of Jason Autry. Jason Autry, who got released in 2020. Nick Barris, as I said, has been on this story from the beginning all the way through up till today. He's been on the story consistently for Scripps News Group. Here he is talking about how Jason Autry's story has changed. Take a listen.
Make no mistake, Jason Autry is a liar. He told two stories, and the question now is, which one to believe? The answer will decide if a convicted killer goes free. It was 7 years ago that a jury convicted Zach Adams for the murder of 20-year-old nursing student Holly Bobo. There was no physical evidence or DNA linking Adams to the crime, so the key for the prosecution was co-defendant Jason Autry, who cut a deal to testify against Adams.
And he said, I need you to help me bury this body.
What was your plan of disposing of Holly's body?
Mr. Gutter.
Autry captivated the courtroom with the gruesome details.
And I grabbed the upper torso of Miss Bobo. Zach come around, let the tailgate down. I brought the upper torso to the end of the tailgate.
The jury believed Autry and sentenced Adams to life. Autry got 8 years, but now he says he made it all up.
It's a very big deal, but it's not very common because most lawyers can't find new evidence in a case of this magnitude.
The new evidence is spelled out in this petition just filed by Adams' appellate lawyer. Autry recants his testimony. He admitted to concocting the entire story in his cell at jail while reviewing discovery. He said, we put it together in 3 days, that he just recreated his day and added Holly to it, all to get him out of jail at the express guidance from his attorney.
That is extremely rare where a witness will recant their testimony and say, I lied about everything.
In fact, Autry did deny any involvement in an exclusive interview with me before the trial. Do you know who did?
No, sir.
Autry changed his story, of course, in the courtroom. So, what now to believe? There will be a hearing in that very same trial court on this petition with witnesses being called. And a judge then will decide whether or not Adams gets a new trial. Nick Barris, News Channel 5.
Nick Barris on the story all the way through. Okay. So he's saying, I know nothing about this. Then in court, he says, I witnessed it. I witnessed Zach Adams put a bullet in Holly Bobo's head, and I was a part of it. And then he says, I made it all up. Like, what's going on here? Brings us to the next question in our investigation. When was Jason Autry telling the truth? I mean, there's like 3 different stories. Like, which one's the truth in all of this? Still here helping with our investigation, Tennessee criminal defense attorney Frank Lanham. Also joining us, behavioral and social scientist Dr. Abby Morono. Dr. Abby, great to have you here. Thanks so much. Frank, I want to begin with you. Give us some perspective here on this development and these vacillating stories of the most important witness in the case.
I'll try to simplify it with a 30-second story if you'll let me. I had a man sitting on death row. I represented post-conviction relief. The primary witness against him was interviewed years before he was arrested. Said, what do you know about a barrel with a man who's killed and body in the barrel? I don't know anything about it. You know anything about a death in a barrel? Don't know anything. They go back a year later, what do you know? Well, I know about a barrel. I know about a dead man. I heard about that, but that's all. Nothing about Watts Bar Lake, nothing about Watts Bar Lake. They go back, they fed her this information. Then she remembers, yeah, I know the body in the barrel. I know about Watts Bar Lake. And eventually continues through 5 interviews where she receives the information and then it becomes added to her story. Now, that's exactly what you just showed on the scene. You showed that when did this story come out? Only after he had the facts from his own discovery. Discovery is where he's provided all the information about what happened. So did he have a truthful story before he was fed information? Apparently not. The testimony comes after he's fed all the information where his story can match the facts. And when that happens, you just can't have credibility with a known liar. If he had the facts that no one knew before he came up with his story, you might say different. But you've got a known liar who has fed the facts before the story, who can sell his story for his life.
Yep.
How that becomes credible witness is beyond me.
All right, Dr. Abby, so after the trial, there was a police interview. Jason Autry recants his story. He says, just like we were talking about here, he was shown the evidence, he crafted a story, totally made the thing up, and a prosecutor, he claims, trained him on how to be a good witness on the stand. So here is Jason Autry recanting his story in a police interview played on the Trial and Error podcast.
I got the version of the story from him and Clark Chapman.
How did they feed you that?
Well, it was given to me through phone records or, questions and stuff going on. I said, well, what if I say all I seen was just a body, laying in the back of the truck? That's not enough to get you out. We put the story together in about 3 days. If you get a story, all you gotta do is swear to it. Well, I was trained.
Who was doing the training?
Jennifer Nichols. She was the boss of it all.
Let me ask you, Dr. Abby, what are the things that you're going to look for when someone is, changing their story and telling their story different ways, one way on a witness stand, one way here in a recantation? Is there a way to pick up on things that might be able to give us an idea of when he's actually telling the truth and when he's being deceptive?
Yeah, one thing that is really important is emotional congruency. So when someone's saying it was very difficult for me, you expect to see behaviors associated with struggling with emotion. And you want to see that emotional authenticity, not a rehearsed presentation. So what you would look for is across the statements, how consistent his behaviors appear with the emotion he's intending to express. In that new statement, there is some congruency where he's talking about feeling guilty. Everything does kind of go down forward, and when we're feeling shame and guilt, everything kind of goes towards the ground as if we're trying to disappear and make ourselves smaller. And we do see a bit of that, and that does contradict his previous behavior, where he did look more composed, and there didn't appear to be a lot of difficult emotional processing, which would be not expected because he's talking about a heinous, horrible thing that's happened. And when he was talking about the murder and the details of the case, he didn't really show difficulty with emotions, whereas he did here. However, that it's an inconsistency. So what I get from this is there are parts that do show emotional authenticity, and then parts that do appear very rehearsed. So it looks like he's probably using some aspects that are true, and he's able to recount that emotional experience. And then other parts where his speech delays, where there's an increased cognitive process, where he's doing rehearsal and he's thinking a little bit more of what have I said? I don't want to catch myself out. So to me, it looks like there's aspects of truth and then aspects of deception.
All right, Dr. Abby Maroney's going to stick around. Frank Lanham, so great to have you on the show. I want to make sure you come back again and again and again. Fantastic analysis. Thank you so much. All right, still to come. Is Zach Adams now telling the truth? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the brutal murder of Holly Bobo. The trial of her killer was dramatic and resulted in a conviction. But does new evidence prove the convicted killer's innocence? Here's the story. In the rolling hills of Parsons, Tennessee, Holly Bobo was a symbol of quiet promise, bright, compassionate, and preparing for a career in nursing. Her disappearance began as a mystery that felt impossible. A young woman seen walking into the woods with a shadowy figure, never to return. As days turned into months, the search became one of the largest in state history, driven by a town unwilling to let Holly fade into darkness. When her remains were finally found, heartbreak turned into determination. Investigators built a case pointing to a man they say abducted, assaulted, and murdered her. His conviction brought relief, but not peace. Too many details felt murky, too many voices conflicted, and still today, the haunting image of Holly walking into the trees lingers, stirring doubts about whether the whole truth has ever come to light. So now the convicted killer, Zach Adams, has a hearing, trying to get a new trial. Took the stand in his own defense to tell his story. Let's watch some of the biggest moments as he denies all of the allegations that were made against him.
Okay, Mr. Adams, I'm just gonna speak to the elephant in the room, okay?
Okay.
Did you know Holly Bobo?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge of the Bobo family?
Miss Karen Bobo was my fourth grade teacher at Parsons Junior High School in middle school.
Did you kidnap Holly Bobo?
No, ma'am.
Did you rape Holly Bobo?
No, ma'am.
Did you murder Holly Bobo?
No, ma'am.
Did you have anything to do with the disposal of Holly Bobo's remains?
No, ma'am.
You spoke with police several times throughout the course of this investigation?
Every time they came to my house, every time they asked me, anytime and every time, I gave a statement. Not once did I ever. I left my job when they come to the jail. Anytime they ask.
Do you recall sitting here in 2017 in this courtroom and watching witnesses give testimony and putting words into your mouth?
I do. Hearsay.
And I'd like to, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'd like to take you through some of the statements that you were alleged to have made. Okay. Did you say some of the things that were testified to?
I did.
And did you say all the things, every single thing that was testified to, did you say?
I did not.
Okay. I want to go through these statements, but before we do, these statements that were given at trial they were accusing you of joking about the murder of Holly Bobo, right?
Yeah.
Why would you say anything like that?
Well, I sold a lot of drugs, and I found it a lot easier when I fronted drugs out. If people were scared of me, I got my money. I got paid. It was just the way it is in the drug business. If people are scared of their drug dealer, they're going to pay. So that's kind of a stupid answer, but it's the truth.
Did you say, I'm just going to ask, did you say, I'll kill you like I did Holly Bobo?
I don't recall saying that.
Did you tell Carl Statler that I did it?
No.
Did you at any time in any of your conversations with Mr. Rivers admit to killing, raping, or kidnapping Holly Bobo?
Never.
He testified that you asked him to tell your brother, Dylan, that if he doesn't keep his mouth shut, that you're going to put him in a hole beside her.
I don't recall saying that. I do remember telling him that he needs to tell my brother. I think he had charges in Nobian County, and that's where my brother was being held. I said, well, you get up there, you need to tell my brother, Dylan Adams, he needs to keep his damn mouth shut, because the lies he's telling has got me arrested for something I didn't do.
Okay. Did you in any way admit to Mr. Cooper or imply to Mr. Cooper that you were involved in Holly Bobo's death?
No.
Okay. How about Jason Kirk? Do you know who that is?
I think that was the other guy that was in there.
All right. And so he testified that he overheard you tell Mr. Cooper that will you give my brother a message for me? Tell him. Say that.
No.
Did you make any statements? Mr. Kirk also testified that you were bragging about the bond that was put on you. And he testified bail around here.
I don't recall specifically saying that, but I did make a comment about the bail being so high, and the way the judge, when I left the courtroom at Chester County, the judge made an announcement to the court that was the guy for the Holly Bobo deal. Like it was kind of a messed up little deal, but I got angry, but I don't specifically recall just saying that.
There's his testimony. That's direct examination, obviously. And it brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is Zach Adams telling the truth here? A lot of denials, but admitting he was bragging about it, but denying that he actually did it, saying, I'm lying. My brag was a lie, so I wanted to look tough, so I'm a drug dealer. All right, let's bring in our guests, help answer this question. Joining us, attorney, former litigator, Lisa Bonner is with us, and still with us, behavioral and social scientist, Dr. Abby Morono. All right, Dr. Abby, from what you saw there, from that part of Zach Adams' testimony, what did you pick up? What did you take away from it?
Well, when it comes to assessing nonverbals, you can't identify if someone is definitively lying based on nonverbal behaviors. There are no behaviors that show someone is lying. There's just behaviors that show emotions that are typically increased when we lie, and stress. In this, what we see, especially at the very beginning, is he's trying to almost be polite and cordial. When he's first addressed, he pulls the lip corners back and upwards. It's not a genuine smile, it's asymmetric, and it's not accompanied by the eyes, but it's a social compliance smile. So we do this when we are obliged to be polite. And we see a lot of significant jaw and mouth tension, which is a very clear sign of suppression and stress. He's also pursing his lips and squeezing his lips together a lot. And all of these behaviors, the lip tightening, the jaw muscles visibly engaged, and we also see the neck muscles contracting. When the body enters fight or flight because of high stress, these behaviors occur. So what he's trying to do is hold back information. And especially with the lips, it's almost as if information is trying to come out. He's trying to withhold that information. And then we also see things like a hard swallow, which is a classic sign of automatic stress response, because stress reduces saliva production. So it's really clear that he's trying to maintain composure and maintain politeness, but he's experiencing a lot of internal stress.
Lisa Bonner, obviously the position he's in, right? Everything you got to take with a grain of salt. This is a guy, life in prison, is trying to get out, wants a new trial. Everybody who's locked up says they're innocent. But what are your thoughts about what he has to say here and the context of it all?
Well, that is a great question, and I tend to agree with a lot of what Dr. Abby said. Obviously, when a convicted felon is looking at even the opportunity for a new trial in these post-conviction relief proceedings, he is going to, one is generally going to obviously try and do everything and say everything that they can to exonerate themselves, get a new trial, paint themselves in the best light. Now, to be fair, Zach has been consistent from the very beginning when he has talked about this, saying that he didn't do it when he's been talking to the police. However, you have a lot of judicial skepticism, which is rightfully so, because the testimony that has been recanted is not the only inculpatory evidence that he has in this trial. So Zach has gone around and bragged to other people about this case, or his involvement in this case, if you will. He has threatened people. He has really basically said that, you know, I did this to be a tough guy. But when you look at all of the evidence, it does seem to be that he is trying to put forth the best and most convincing case that he can to convince a judge to give him a new trial based on this recanted testimony.
How much impact do you think his testimony will have on a judge?
Well, judges are generally skeptical about this, and you don't look at this as in terms of new testimony. They're very skeptical of this, and you're not going to look at the recanted testimony in just on an island by itself. What you're going to have is he's going to take in the totality of the circumstances and all of the other evidence. Now, you do not have him. You don't have his DNA on the body. You don't have other things that directly, connect him to this case. However, you do have him in his own words telling other people that he did it. That is something. So you have, however you look at it, you do have a lot of evidence that does point to him, and nothing better than him saying to other people, I did it. I was involved.
And that's more direct evidence. That is more direct evidence.
And you can't get any more direct than that. So it's a lot of judicial skepticism you have to overcome in this instance.
Lisa Bonner, great to have your input. Thanks so much. Dr. Abby's going to stick around. Coming up next, we're going to continue to look at Zach Adams' statements as we ask, is he telling the truth?
I was a drug user. I didn't remember everything I did that day, but I didn't lie about where I was at.
The disappearance of Mother Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair.
The massive trail of evidence.
This incredible timeline of Google searches.
It shows everything that was in his mind.
He searched how long before a body starts to smell.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage begins December 1st on Court TV.
And he said, I need you to help me bury this body.
What was your plan of disposing of Holly's body?
It was the gutter, and I grabbed the upper torso of Miss Bobo. Zach come around, let the tailgate down. I brought the upper torso to the end of the tailgate.
That was the key witness. He got 8 years. He's out. He is a free man today. But there are instances of him taking back his story. So he's told several different stories, which became part of the basis for alleged new evidence for Zach Adams, the man who's convicted of murdering Holly Bobo. Another part of his evidence is he himself taking the witness stand and denying all of these allegations, finally getting up on the stand. Here he is being cross-examined. Take a look.
8:30, you called Jason Autry on the morning of April 13th, 2011.
Ms. Weiler, there was a lot of phone calls I made that morning. There was a lot of people I talked to that morning that I don't recall talking to. There's a lot of things I did that day that I didn't mention.
Right.
And it wasn't because I was lying or trying to be. It's because I just didn't remember. I was a drug user. I didn't remember everything I did that day, but I didn't lie about where I was at.
You like to leave things out, like you told. You like to leave things out sometimes when the police talk to you.
No.
Okay.
No.
8:38, you're calling Jason Autry. 8:53, you're calling Jason Autry. What was the urgency of getting hold of Jason Autry that morning?
We talk all the time.
Okay.
We probably talked every day. Pull the phone records before that day, April 12th, April 11th. How many times did we talk to Jason Autry? I talked to Jason Autry weekly. I mean, every day I've talked to Jason. There probably wasn't a day that went by during that time period that we didn't talk. We used drugs every day. Of course we talked.
Y'all were
Absolutely,
close.
we talked every day.
Y'all were close.
I looked up to him.
It's the whole point of this hearing for you to convince Judge Bradbury that there's no way you could have raped, murdered, and kidnapped Holly Bobo because you were pulled in backward at the ATM at 11:12 in the morning on April 13th, right?
That's
right?
correct. That is correct.
Right.
That's correct.
But we got no proof of that.
That truck.
Okay, the truck that you can't see anybody in.
That truck is my brother's truck. I was driving that truck.
Okay.
Was there any other vehicles that was pulled in the ATM backwards that day?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
If we had the real ATM video, we would know, wouldn't we?
We've seen it.
That's not the real ATM video. ATM video shows the person that's punching the numbers in. If we had that, we would see Shane Austin punching the numbers in.
And
you would see me in the driver's seat and possibly my brother in the back.
Quite a back and forth. You know, the test of any witness, any testimony is always the cross-examination. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. It's the question we've been asking about Zach Adams. Is Zach Adams telling the truth? How about in this part of the cross-examination? Here to help with our investigation, high-profile civil and criminal defense lawyer John Phillips is with us. He's represented many high-profile cases, including Joe Exotic, star of the Netflix series Tiger King and Amoroso. Great to see you, John. And still with us, behavioral and social scientist Dr. Abby Morono. All right, John, let me start with you. Your thoughts about this hearing, this testimony, this back and forth. Do you think he's telling the truth?
I think he's telling his truth. I don't think that's the truth, but you know what these guys do, Vinny. They sit in a cell and they come out with a way that they can reconcile what happened and find their freedom. You know, Michael Dunn did it with 2 different trials about the murder of Jordan Davis. You know, he's smart, he's argumentative, but the evidence isn't on his side, and God bless these prosecutors and this judge for giving him a 7-day evidentiary hearing to tell his new side of the story.
Dr. Abby Morono, what did you see there in that cross-examination? I mean, there's a lot more happening there. What did you pick up on?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with him believing he's telling his truth. And you can see that with the escalation of anger as he's being questioned and probed. At the start, he's holding his face very tight. His jaw is clamped. The muscles in his neck continue to be engaged. The lower half of his face barely moves. And this is what we see with someone trying to stay in control of their emotions. But as the questioning continues, that controlled stillness begins to break. The nostrils flare, his breathing becomes more pronounced, the upper lip lifts slightly, and these are all early signs that the nervous system is starting to really get engaged. And it's the beginning of that fight response, not flight, it's not fear, it's aggression. And the strongest moment is when the corners of his mouth pull back into a grimace, very tight. And this expression appears when emotional control slips. So it's clear that his body is shifting from controlling that emotion to now reacting to the emotion. And I think this is the anger starting to really come through as his truth is being probed more aggressively.
John Phillips, this case, it is very troubling for many different reasons. Obviously, first, the brutal murder and abduction of this wonderful young woman who wanted to pursue an incredible career as a nurse and just help others, right? That's like the dream. You would want all of our children to have that in their mind and in their goals. But what about the truth, the whole truth here? That's what I'm concerned about, John, do you feel like we've gotten the whole truth? Do you think justice has been served to this point?
You know, justice is defined many different ways. Criminal justice to a victim is the most dominant justice. Doesn't matter what happens in civil court or the court of public opinion. And we have a conviction here. But every time you rip that scab and have, you know, gushing blood of you know, reopening of cases, it just harms the family more and more. There is no closure. And, you know, I feel like everybody's sitting here like we're sitting here, Vinnie, and have been sitting here for decades saying, I think justice is going to get it right. But, you know, for every liar on the stand, you know, there's somebody there that was wrongfully convicted. And so we have to give them, you know, all of the rights our Constitution allows too.
Yeah. Dr. Abbey, we only have about 20 seconds left here. Bottom line, from watching this guy on the stand, do you feel like he was giving us the truth?
It's hard to say from nonverbals. The linguistic analysis can give you more of the actual truth. The nonverbals can tell you if it's an authentic expression. I do believe that his behaviors show an authentic expression and is a true emotional reaction. Whether that is his truth or the actual truth is difficult to say from a nonverbal perspective, but the emotions do appear authentic.
Well, we always appreciate your insight. Dr. Abby Morono, great to have you. John Phillips, great to see you again, my man. We'll see you again soon.
Great to see you.
You know, there was a lot of pressure on law enforcement to solve this case and hold someone responsible. The problem is, when your case relies almost entirely on the words of a felon trying to save himself, it's hard to figure out the truth. And when that witness contradicts himself, it raises even more questions and makes you wonder, did our system get it right? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.